The black woman. The first woman on the planet.
Arguably the strongest woman on the planet.
Not because it is innate in her, but because she has to be.
She has to navigate oppression and neglection in both white and black spaces. Yet, she continues to press through.
Black women are often forgotten in the movement for black liberation and equity.
Even though they are the force behind the movement, their needs and desires are an afterthought. Yet, they still press on.
Black women aren't sex objects, trophies, or mammies. Black women are more than just boss cooks and strength bearers.
They are worthy, and we are here for the uplifting of black women. Can't breathe, can't breathe, can't breathe, can't breathe. Can't breathe, can't breathe. Why don't you get off of me? Can't breathe, can't breathe, can't breathe, can't breathe. Can't breathe, can't breathe. Why don't you get off of me? Can't breathe, can't breathe.
I am a woman. I am a young woman. I am a young, black, and gifted woman. And I, too, was made in the image of God. My name is Rachel Askew. And on Instagram recently, the story of the wife of Frederick Douglass was highlighted. And what I noticed about this story is that most of us only know her as the wife. Not even the wife, but his first wife. And in fact, it indicates to me the invisibility of black women. I've known myself the invisibility of black women. We have a movie called Hidden Figures. Hidden is literally in the name. We can hardly name any black woman that fought against the institution of slavery besides Harriet Tubman. Can we even name the women, the black women who began this global Black Lives Matter movement that we see taking place? I guarantee most of us cannot. I am invisible, understand, simply because people refuse to see me. Ralph Ellison said that in his book, Invisible Man. Black women have changed the trajectory of the world, and we don't even know their names. And the world refuses to see us. I work with young people. I work with young black girls. And I walk through all kinds of places with my girls. And I have to have conversations with them about what it means for them to be seen and unseen. Because if they're not feeling completely invisible, they're already being looked at as if they've done something wrong or they've been criminalized. In 2016, there was a video that surfaced at the Tacoma Mall parking lot of police throwing a young girl around, placing her up against a car, choking her out. In 2019, a study in schools reflected that there was this discipline gap between black girls and white girls. And that's not even the most shocking part. The most shocking part is that that gap completely and utterly exceeded the gap between black boys and white boys. And I've seen this play out with my own young people. There's a book entitled, All the Women Are White, All the Blacks Are Men, but some of us are brave. And that intersection, if held rightly, seeks to see black women.
Can't breathe, can't breathe, can't breathe, can't breathe.
The murder of a Johnstown woman shot and killed in a car 36 years ago remains unsolved, but investigators say they are not giving
Black
up
woman,
hope in their
forgotten.
efforts in finding that killer.
It's personal for me. My aunt, Maxine Andrews, was loved by many. She lit up any room she walked into. On November 6th, 1978, while sitting in her car after visiting friends, she was shot and killed by a lone gunman. The white woman sitting in the driver's side walked away unscathed. That showed to be a deliberate, targeted murder. At the age of 29, my Aunt Maxine's life was taken, and 42 years later, her killer has not been found. Throughout the community, people claim they know exactly who is responsible. However, that would mean that the city would have to unveil their ugly, deep-seated issues of race, wealth, and power. The white and rich get away with murder, and Black families do not get closure. Every day I question, had my aunt been a white woman with money and stature, would her case be cold today?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This your boy, Brother Wash. We got Grant Twyman out there in Washington. I'm sitting here with my neighbor, my good sister, my friend, Jasmine Harris. And Grant's out there with Rachel. You heard both of these beautiful women speak about certain things. So I want to ask you, Jazz, like you talked about the situation or the unsolved case of your aunt. Why is that important to know things like that pertaining to Black women's experience?
Well, I think that's just the perfect portrayal of how Black women are taken seriously. Like this, my aunt, she lost her life at 29. And it just seemed like the police didn't really do what they needed to do on their side to uncover what actually happened. It's been 40 something years and the case hasn't been solved. So the town, they say they know who did it. So it's like, why aren't they talking to the right people? So the case has been opened recently because my dad, due to me urging him, has done some more pushback. So it has been opened after all this time. So that's good news in itself.
So you believe that this is something that's not uncommon, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, so just for Black women, white women, like what's specific about that?
Definitely specific for Black women. Even when you hear about murders, you see like white women, when they're missing, when they're murdered, you see that all plastered on the news. You don't really see that. You don't get the same coverage with Black women.
Yeah, I think about just the gender differences, the gender racial differences, right? That intersection when it comes to Black women, things that white women experience oppression as well, but they're still above with a lot of things. They still are able to get rid of or away with certain things. So you have like the situation with Botham Jean, with Amber, the police officer. She was like one of the only police officers I know to actually go to trial and get sentenced, but she still got less of a sentence and everything. But you hear things like Breonna Taylor, whose murderers still like there's nothing, like nothing. You have so many things like Sandra Bland, so many issues, even within our injustice, our marches and stuff, where a lot of the Black women that are being murdered by police, their experiences, we have to intentionally look for those things because it's not getting the same type of coverage.
Right. And that's another thing I was going to say. Like, there are a lot of Black women who were killed, murdered by the police. But a lot of times you don't know their name. Like, you can't call their names out specifically because there's just not the same coverage.
Yeah, Rachel, we wanted to hear from you a little bit to talk about the invisibility of Black women and stuff that you were talking about. If you can expound a little bit more on that.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I'm a youth worker. So I'm working with young people all day long. I feel really privileged that I get to be walking with the next generation and specifically Black girls. And I have seen Black girls continually overlooked in their classrooms, and even in their like spaces where they're supposed to be celebrated, in sports. And specifically when I'm with them, even my proximity to whiteness as a biracial Black woman allows me certain privileges. So when I go shop at Nordstrom, nobody's looking at me twice. But when I bring my girls with me, all of a sudden every eye is on me. And I know that it seems contrary to invisibility, but the invisibility is not about whether they see you, it's who they see you as, right? And when they criminalize Black girls by the way that they look at them, they aren't seeing them for who they are. And so I just read some research that dropped this week about Black and brown girl leaders and how the system is continually overlooking them as leaders. The system is, in a sense, failing them. And so, I mean, if you're interested in learning more about that, Girls Leadership is an organization that just dropped this research that was done by a Black woman. The report is written by a Black woman. And it really identifies this gap that we have, where even when we talk about women leaders, we're talking about white women. And when we talk about Black leaders, we're talking about Black boys. But falling in the middle of that is these Black girls. And what is the craziest statistic that I read yesterday is that they have the confidence and the belief that they are leaders more than any other ethnic background of any girl in the United States of America. So honestly, we miss out. You know what I'm saying? Like, we as a country are missing out on the leadership and the potential of Black girls by continuing to allow them to be invisible and kind of sit in this minimized identity. So.
Yeah, I think part of the thing, and I'll give it to you, bro, is how Black women are perceived in those roles, right? And y'all can always correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Black women that are operating in leadership are seen as bossy or intimidating, or, oh, she thinks she's too smart, or just all these negative things that come with leadership, even though she's not acting any differently than anyone else, right? She's just as competent, maybe even more competent. When you think about just biological development between men and women develop faster psychologically, intellectually than boys, but yet boys are always seen as, hey, you're going to be the leader. And then when you add that intersectional piece to it, Black women are even more so, right, dismissed and stigmatized, right, and ignored, like I said, that invisibility because of that intersectional piece to it. So I don't know, man, this is tough.
Yeah, it's real. One thing that I'm curious to hear from Rachel and Jasmine is like this idea, like for Black women and for Black girls, specifically for Black girls, like their inability to escape the stereotypes commonly ascribed to Black female women adults, right? Mm-hmm. Like as a kid, you have those same stereotypes being, thrown at you. Like what is that like? Like how are our young Black girls doing, right? Combating stereotype threat as being 5 and 9 and 13 and 16, being categorized as, the same type of stereotypes as an adult. Like how's that going?
I'll start if that's okay, Jasmine. In my experience, that has been compounded by systems that would make these young women adults before they need to be. And so I have a 6-year-old, 7-year-old kid, young Black girl that I'm working with, who's taking care of her siblings who are younger than her, right? And this like matriarch figure of Black women begins so early on, and it's not their choice in most situations, and so that compounds the stereotypes. And so in my experience, the girls I'm working with, and even in my own life, I have believed that those stereotypes were true. And so I spend a lot of my time helping girls unlearn that that's not your identity. That's not who you are. Now, there is nobody more qualified to lead than a Black woman because of what they endured, what they know, and who they know. They know every marginalized experience, right? Like, there is literally nobody more qualified. And so putting a flip of the switch on that piece that can feel stereotype, that can really make you feel boxed in, and allowing them to unlearn the negative pieces, but then take on the identity of the positives. It's been a lot of the work, but it's an uphill battle for sure, because when you have the compounding of systems with the stereotype threat, it really does become overwhelming.
Yeah. Jasmine, I'm curious to your thoughts also on that.
I mean, Rachel said it perfectly. It's definitely, like you said, it's the system. It's, we live in America. Black girls deal with patriarchy and also, what comes along with being a Black person, like those stereotypes surrounding them. So they have, double that they're dealing with. So, I mean, I can't say any perfect than Rachel has just said. I don't have any more to say. She dropped the mic.
No, that's cool. So some of my thoughts, right? because I'm wondering, right? There's certain things that we kind of put together as the Black experience, or then there's certain things that Black men experience that we kind of highlight, which is mass incarceration, or even the school to prison pipeline. Like this just statistically numbers that Black men get incarcerated more than Black women, that Black boys get penalized in school more than Black girls, and that Black women do better educationally than Black boys. But it doesn't mean that Black women and Black girls are still disproportionately experiencing those things compared to everyone else. So I think that's kind of like maybe why Black women we don't see it as much, because it's not as much as Black men, but it's still happening like maybe a close second, but because it's happening so much more. And I don't know, this is what I'm kind of thinking, why do you think that Black women that experience mass incarceration too, or the prison and school pipeline isn't being, as well known as Black men, other than like the work of Kimberly Crenshaw and Black womanists like that?
Repeat the question. Why is it?
Yeah, so
it was a lot.
So obviously, just Black men experience certain things that more than Black women, but Black women is a close second. But yet we don't really know or hear about those things. Like people like us, we would know because we consider like racial scholars. We intentionally know this thing. We're invested in this stuff, but like the lay person, the normal person, they don't know that Black women are still experiencing mass incarceration, prison and school pipeline, and things like that.
I think we go back though to it's not important to society, just like what the murder that I was speaking of with my aunt, her coverage wasn't important because she was a Black woman. I just don't feel like women are, because of the patriarchal society, I don't think it's taken as seriously.
You got Rachel.
Go ahead. Like I think there's also this thing, and you kind of alluded to it, from a woman's perspective, even from a man's perspective. Like we have to be careful. Like we're not exempt or immune from marginalizing our sisters. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or playing into the microaggressions, right, and all the things that go on that isolate, right, and oppress Black women, right? Like as Black men, we're not exempt or immune from falling into that stream of operating and thinking. And so I think one of the things that may have happened is we kind of just went with the flow in a sense, right? And have also forgot
that benefits
about Black women. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, and to add to that, I think the forgetting part comes again, and I'll bring it back to invisibility, but the statistics of violence that we're looking at center Black men.
Yeah.
Now, if we're talking about human sex trafficking, how many Black women are trafficked, right? And to me, that's a form of slavery. That's a form of imprisonment, right? Yeah. And so, but that doesn't center a Black male narrative. It centers the Black female narrative, Black trans women. And, when we talk about sexual violence, like that often centers Black women. I mean, people were stunned when that R. Kelly documentary dropped, right? But this violence against Black women is a combination, right, of violence against Blackness and violence against women. And so when we center that is when we're exposed to widespread statistics. So I think for the things that my brother was just listing, like mass incarceration, school to prison pipeline, all those pieces, they do, those statistics center Black men. Not that that's not important, but that's what it centers. And that's why I think we don't have those conversations necessarily.
Yeah, no, that's real. And then like, it kind of brings back into that, the focus, like when we talk about intersectionality, we're not just talking about multiple identities, right? We're talking about multiple identities of oppression, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's the full, like true definition when we mention intersectionality. And Black women experience that in a way that's unique,
right.
Which I think is it calls for us to make the statement, Black women are worthy, right? Like we have to affirm it, we have to shout it and continue to shout it, and then live like that's true.
Yeah, one thing for me, I'm trying to, as an educator, I'm trying to raise more awareness on the differences between womanism and feminism, right? Or Black feminism, right? So we're having this conversation with my students, and I don't identify as a feminist at all. I identify as a womanist. Feminism is more of a movement that benefits white women, where womanism is a movement that benefits all women, particularly Black and brown women. Some people kind of argue, well, feminism has, diverse sections or whatever. And I'm just like, well, womanism doesn't have sections, right? It's just about women, right? Black and brown women. So I identify as a womanist, but even something like that doesn't get as much play. And, even like the poster itself, you had Living Single, which is a dope sitcom from the 90s. Flavor, right? Flavor. The poster in the back was the feminist poster, right? Where it says, we can do it, with the white woman with the bandana. And I was kind of shocked that they didn't have the other poster, which is a poster of a Black woman and a Latinx woman and another woman saying, we all can do it. Like, Living Single had an opportunity and everything to do those type of things. So for me, I'm trying to understand, like, what can we do, right? As number one, Black men, right? Again, it's our thing. We benefit from patriarchy, right? Obviously in different levels or whatever the case may be, but at the end of the day, we still benefit from upholding that. And it's, granting my job to be able to decolonize our minds and dismantle that within our homes and in the work that we do. So I don't know, I'm just kind of like throwing that out there, what y'all have to say about that type of stuff.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think Black male educators are so important. So that's definitely the key. Good job. But it definitely starts at home as well. Just imagine like the effect that you as a father, you show that, you portray that, you uplift Black women in your household, and then your son sees that. And then that's what he takes. And then his friends will see him doing that. And then it's just this whole cycle of, in generations of Black men being a part of that movement, uplifting Black women. Because, we got this. We're going to uplift ourselves, whether y'all do or not.
That's real.
Okay?
That's real.
But we do appreciate it. And it is important for you as Black men to, unlearn some of the things that you know from just being in the society as Americans, as Black men, because you do have no privilege. So, I think that's the biggest thing. It starts at home.
Yeah, what y'all got to say? What y'all got on that tape?
I mean, I don't have much to add to what Jasmine said, except for, we're not looking for none of that fake shit. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss on this. But like the beautiful Black queen, like the surface level language is so minimal to me. Because I've had a man say those same words to me, but then not treat me like a whole human. And I'm not 3/4 of a human. And so I think when we talk about the decolonizing of the mind, it's like this, it's a depth of undoing that goes beyond, I think, just our surface level language. So I think, a brother could be hearing this and being like, oh, I just need to talk better about my woman at home so that my kid sees. And like, I don't want that to be the case. Like, that doesn't, I mean, that's like when a white person is like super politically correct and careful all of a sudden, but like nothing about their demeanor or their attitude or the way that they see systems working changes. Like, I think what Jasmine's describing is a change of lens. Like, you need a new lens in the way that you see the world and you approach the world. So it's not this like surface level interaction.
And for me, so jazz is kind of limited to like social cognitive theory, social learning theory. But it's also for me sitting down and actually talking to my sons and stuff. So I got 2 sons. I got a 13-year-old son and a 5-year-old son, and then a 1-year-old daughter. My wokeness or whatever towards, womanism, but it extends prior, before I had a daughter. It didn't take me having a daughter to be like, hey, I'm for Black women, things like that. However, for me, it's when we're watching TV and we see certain things, I'll hit my son, yo, that's not real, yo. Don't let me see you do that, and breaking down these things. So I do think having those conversations, not just with, my children, but even with my mentees and stuff, and how they treat women in general, but specifically Black women. I've said it before, I am a Black apologist. I'm all for Black people. I can't say that I'm for the liberation of, all women right now. Just where I'm solely focused on the liberation of Black women and obviously Black men. So
yeah, it's the thing I love about the Code Red series is we're challenging everybody, right? Mm-hmm. So even as we sit here, right, like it's important, especially for Wash and I to reflect, right, and think about ways that we need to disrupt how we do business every day. And so I'm thinking about like how often we view Black women and celebrate them for ways that they satisfy us, right? Mm. Like entertain us, right? Like those type of things, but not necessarily for who they are, right? And so I'm thinking about like in my areas of privilege or access and opportunity, how am I creating space for Black women, right? How am I like what can I do to show up for you, right? Like where am I missing it, right? Where am I contributing to the negative experience, right? That isn't a unique phenomenon to our relationship, but just all over our country. Right? Yeah. How can I show up in a way that's real and authentic and doesn't just placate you? Because that's one of the great things about Black culture, right? Yeah. Like we value this full integration of self, right? And oftentimes we say, like, just be real, right? Just be you, right? Like that's that value and that authenticity. Yeah. And so I'm like, hey, how can I show up in a way that's real and authentic and values you and all your gifts? And honestly, how we've been missing out, right? Relationally, organizationally, regionally, by making Black women invisible. Yeah. We're missing out, right? Like I'm missing out. Well, we got to change that.
It's funny. Grant and I spoke about this earlier at another time, right? Where women sometimes they thank me for using my voice or my privilege and stuff like that, and I absolutely hate it. Like, don't thank me, and I say this to them too, right? Don't thank me for doing a basic thing, right?
Yeah, right. Legit, he says
turning in your homework late. Yeah.
Like, I don't thank white people for using I appreciate it for sure, but I'm not going to thank you for doing a basic human, decent thing.
Right.
This is what it is, right? So men that are listening, and particularly even more so like Black men, because I think that we sometimes we can have that kind of crown because we're sticking up for our women. Number one, Black women are not our women. We are one, right? Yeah. But they don't belong to us, right? But we are a community, so I could get it from that lens for sure. But we shouldn't take extra pride because we're doing something that's very basic, right? It's just basic human decency to stand up for injustice, right? And especially when we're the ones, in some senses, in many senses, benefiting from pushing them down.
Yeah, no, that's real.
Anybody? I can cut this part out, but anybody got anything to say? All right, cool. Yo, Grant, you can do the closeout.
Okay. Hey, so that wraps up our time today. Like, this conversation has been incredible, and honestly, I appreciate being able to sit and Jasmine and Rachel, y'all invest into us, right? Like, you're not obligated to teach us. You're not obligated to school us on your experiences. Like, those are areas of vulnerability and truth and honesty. And I just want to say we appreciate it, right? And we thank you because you don't have to do it, right? And so that's the Code Red episode for us today. Again, Rachel, Jasmine, it's been an honor. I appreciate you.
Please go check out Jasmine's podcast on all podcast platforms called Low Key Radical. That joint is dope. All right.
And we'll shout out Rachel's podcast also. These Black women are doing incredible things, learning in community on all platforms that podcasts can be viewed. Go check it out. be challenged, be encouraged. Let's do this the right way.
Hey, y'all hear these women? Y'all can't say y'all don't know anymore. Like,
right.
They bringing that info to you. You know what I'm saying? All right, y'all. Code Red. We out.
Go Red.
Can't breathe, can't breathe, can't breathe, can't breathe, can't breathe, can't breathe. Why don't you get off of me? Can't breathe, can't breathe, can't breathe, can't breathe, can't breathe, can't breathe. Why don't you get off of me? Can't breathe, can't breathe.